Pushing it out. We're live. Nikolay, how are you?
I'm really great. Super excited to be here. Super excited to speak to you because I'm a fan of your work.
Thank you. We've been in touch for, I guess, a while now. Like we had our first meeting like a month or two ago, but I think we hit it off pretty well with some of our discussion around. And I guess like launching straight into the topics that we wanted to talk about is that I feel like personally that there's so many things that's happened in the history of esports that needs to be looked at a bit more as we go into the future. There's some learnings that have been forgotten. And, from these kind of people who've been there since the 90s, since the 2000s, the 2010s even, who have gone through that whole stage of building something from nothing. And there's some learnings to be had, the same way that there's learnings to be had from traditional sports industry within esports. What can we do that they've done well? What can we avoid that they've done bad? And try to go from there. But hey, let's kick it off as we do always. Let us know a bit more about yourself and your history, and then we'll dive straight into our questions because we've got an hour, but I'm sure we can talk for 20 minutes.
So I'm Nikolay Syusko. I'm a co-founder of the Moon Esports Innovation Agency, and I'm one of the first esports athlete generation. I know that some people could argue that the first esports competitions were held in the 70s or 80s. I can't remember the name of the activities, but I've started be a part of esports more than 20 years ago, when the local LAN championship were dedicated to Mortal Kombat, Need for Speed, Age of Empires, etc. It was so small, so weird, but at the same time super cool, and in the midst of economical crisis. So for part of the generation, the times were super horrible, but for kids as myself, I was super excited with everything that was surrounded with computers and the Sega Mega Drive and the video games. And at that time, I was infused with some kind of magic of the games, of these virtual worlds where I could feel myself as a part of the virtual environment. And eventually I was trying to make a career on a local level, participating in a VCG qualifications as the leader of the CS 1.6 squad at that time, and even earlier versions. I was the administrator of the local cyber cafes. There weren't any arenas at that time. It was more like small places with the bandits playing Counter-Strike, with the gypsies playing GTA. It were really cool times, but there were no space for a career. So I made my career in marketing and in communications, working with the digital communication agencies, PR agencies, etc. For about 10 years plus, I was responsible for the B2B relationship with the brands like Coca-Cola, MasterCard, majority of them, helping them to transform their communications toward the digital activities. First social media, first mobile development, CRM systems, etc., etc. So we were disrupting communications for almost 10 years. And then I switched to the startups. I thought that I'm not a fan of the corporate lifestyle. I'm not a fan of the big systems. I'm a fan of agile teams, fast decision-making. That's when I found myself, acquired a great team of strategists, creative directors, surrounded myself with the C-level executives from Intel, Ericsson, EBI, and now we are aiming to, generally speaking, now I'm accomplishing my childhood dream, build a career in gaming and in esports, because I just felt that I'm super lucky that I'm doing this. Okay, I'm a bit old school, CSGO, StarCraft, not so into LoL, etc., but that's my thing. And now I find myself in the interesting position when my previous background could be really valuable for the market to build an infrastructure for a change. Right now, I'm working with lots of the tech startups that are disrupting the market and that will bring a real infrastructure that people will use, starting from streaming, data analytics, playing performance, etc., etc. And alongside of that, I want to disrupt creativity culture within this market. So like when in a year there will be more and more esports business cases competing for the marketing festivals all over the world. That's more or less.
It's funny, like pulling out like something you said right at the end. It's really funny how you are focused on disrupting, you know, how advertising is done in esports, because it's not often that you need to disrupt something that's so new, right? It's like, you know, we don't even have a set industry, but you know, I've held this opinion for a while and have started talking about it in content a bit more as I developed, you know, my side of the argument, is that I feel like a lot of esports companies are functioning like they're corporate companies. They're functioning like they've been around for 20, 30 years. They're functioning like they have 5,000 plus employees and they're a large industry, when they're not. You know, you see a lot of these new esports teams will launch with the same looking Twitter as anyone else. They'll try to buy the best team in League of Legends, Counter-Strike, and Overwatch, like everyone else. They'll release jerseys for sale on the first day that they launch with their logo on it, like everyone else, and then they'll go after Razer and Corsair and Intel and then Red Bull, like everyone else. I'd like you to kind of start with touching on that. Like, why does the market need disruption, and how will you kind of lead the charge?
Let me get from the different perspectives. So in terms of marketing, for lots of the years, the marketing was pretty the same, done in an old school way. We will make a TV spot, we will show it within the Super Bowl or on the media channels, we will get the biggest reach, we will track the connection with the sales, and that's it. Oh, we don't want to mess with the digital advertising. We don't want to mess so much with the PR when TV spots are working really well. But what the digital transformation brought to us, and it brought a new terminology like growth. Within the startups, growth is the mindset of constant innovation, like a loop cycle. When you're creating a new campaigns weekly and you don't know for sure what would work, what would not. So this is the constant innovation and a constant challenging on how we could communicate with our customers, how could we build the relations. So all these new startups proved that agile mindset, rapid prototyping, and the mentality of creating a great ideas on the go would really benefit emerging businesses. In terms of esports organizations, you're 100% right that they build a structure that isn't so flexible enough in terms of the business efficiency. Like several days ago, I read a take from the creator of Natus Vincere, Alexander Kochanowski, that stated that in esports, there are almost none company that create a sustainable business model in terms of organizations. Why? And I think the challenge lies in a simple topic. We should better do customer development, which means that we should concentrate our work on our advertisers, partners, and fans. Think of the sport, for example, like Barcelona, one of the biggest soccer clubs in the world. They have a history of fan-club relationship. When each fan has a card, when each fan has a certain number in the CRM, with each when each fan is literally a part of the club, part of the culture. In terms of the esports, I really doubt that it works so well. I know that there's the pop culture within the esports organization in the States when people are fans of the particular organization, especially if they are like a home-based Overwatch organization, like I'm cheering for the club that is situated within my town. But at the same time, I never seen any deep club fan relationship going on within the market when fans are part of the story. There's a great campaign of G2, like G2 Army, but I want to see more campaigns on the market. And at the same time, marketing. Ask majority of marketing directors what they think of esports. They will tell you, what's that? Ask majority of brand managers how you track efficiency in esports. You will get really vague answers like, oh, we track awareness, we track reach, something. But there's a big problem how to connect the esports fans with the sales and figure out what's the real capacity of this purchasing capacity of these customers. When all these people are buying Nike shoes for £100, euros, etc. So they have money. They're spending lots of the money on skins. So will they spend more and more on FMCG brands, on I don't know, the mobile phones, etc.? That's a question still unsolved. So disruption is here. Think of this as a shock therapy. It works as, I think that lots of the old school people became a bit lazy in terms of pushing market forward, pushing advertisers, creating new, really original campaigns. So I was shocked when I analyzed the advertising market in esports, that if I compare it with the automotive industry or telecom industry, there's no cool campaigns here in terms of the big festivals and creativity, idea generation, etc. Or there's another marker. Check the mainstream media. There will be no esports activations. Why? Because the industry lacks of creativity.
I think there's a couple of things to pull out of that. The first thing I think of is Seth Godin. I recently just listened to his book about marketing, and he's a former .com executive and very well respected in the marketing space. And if anyone hasn't heard of him before, I think it's Seth's.blog is his URL, which is obviously a great URL to have these days. And one thing that he said that resonated with me so strongly, and I've been repeating it almost every day since then, is that a lot of people in esports are not focused. A lot of people in esports are focused on their millionth customer. They're not focused on their first 50. And if they're raising a lot of capital, they're releasing their jerseys for sale, they're trying to sign the Mercedes sponsorship, et cetera, talking about where it will go, about what they'll do when they're big, what they'll do when they're as big as FaZe or bigger, what they'll do when they're bigger than Team Liquid, what they'll do when they release a game that's bigger than Dota 2. But they're not focusing on who's their first 50 customers. Who are the people who like every single tweet you ever make? Who are the people who turn up to every single Twitch stream you've done since you've been at 30 concurrent viewers, now that you're at 20,000, like Ninja or Shroud or someone like that? And not asking them directly, who are you? Where do you live? Why do you watch me? Why are you fans? Can you bring in your friends? Why are you not bringing in your friends? Because, obviously that's an instant marketing play. Everybody brings 2 friends, and then all their 2 friends being 2 friends, and voila, you've got 20,000 fans. And even thinking about, do you need 1 million fans? Like these indie bands that are able to survive off, what they say is like you can live off 1,000 hyper fans, 1,000 core fans that come to every single concert you do. They buy every single album that you sell on both vinyl and CD and digital, and they listen to you on Spotify nonstop. They'll purchase every piece of merchandise that you've ever launched. They'll sell out your 300 limited run because they're going to be buying 5 each. So where are those people? Unless you're a brand, say like FaZe, you don't see a lot of people having that fanatical following. So I think that's a big part of what you're saying too, is focusing on the first 50.
I have a case here. Like 8 years ago, when we were working with Nestle, and Nestle was launching a new Haribo competitor on the Russian market, we were not a target audience within the creative team, business development team. So we were thinking like how to understand kids. So what we've done, we found kids that were super potential consumers for this brand, and we made them a part of our creative team. We brought them to the table, we sit them with a brand manager, and we ask them, tell us about the latest memes, tell us about how you consume things, where do you go, what do you play, what do you drink, what's cool for you, what's not cool. And right now, and I was speaking with the girl from an agency in Moscow, they are telling that this trend became mainstream within FMCG brands. For example, when the brand manager, like 35, 36-year-old women, sits in the office, she knows that she is not target audience. She can understand kids so well, unless she have lots of kids in her home, so she could speak with them, etc. So they're bringing kids to the table as not an influencers, but a part of creative teams. So what I was thinking, that all these esports organizations, they need to bring fans in their offices, apply design thinking mindset, and creating ideas that will fit the fans. One of the simplest ideas, and I still can't understand why not so many orgs are doing this, in terms of the merchandising. Somehow, esports organizations are trying to sell premium clothes. And this is ridiculous. This is like a really strange way of showing that, hey, this is the premium industry. But that's not true. The majority of people can't afford gaming PC. That's why the mobile gaming is so big in Brazil, India, etc. So you need to start with the basic clothing collection, like H&M, like basic collection, black, white, so people could start wearing your brand and just get used to it. Just get used to your logo. When the other kids will ask them, what's that logo? You will always tell that I'm a proud fan of the Face Clan, etc. Maybe it's great to create even the number, like you're a fan 1, 2, 100, etc., etc., to build a legacy within your fans. So your fans will know that they were one of the first to become an official part of your fan club. And think of how the sports clubs are working with the fans. I made the research like 3 months ago about the sport tech industry, and I was shocked how digitalized is the other relationship between the biggest football clubs in the States and the fans. They're like about 10 or more suppliers working within the one pipeline. Like there's a platform, their content platform separate from the marketing platform, etc., etc. It's a huge industry. So we need to get an inspiration from the ones that already made a step forward within the fans relationship. And at the same time, we need to think about the brand identity. What's the difference? If I will ask someone, what's the difference between Cloud9 and Team Liquid as the brands, I think we will have really strange answers, like, oh, I don't know, some horses, some clouds. So, and when we're thinking about the brands, the answer or emotions that brands are really creating within ourselves should be really simplified in one sentence. Like these organizations stands for that. That's why I'm a big fan of the Evil Geniuses latest approach.
Brand refresh,
They're telling they're completely different, and they really appeal to this. Okay, it's masculine mindset. There could be problems with the sexism, but at the same time, they're showing that we're angry. We are here to win, to compete. If you want to compete with us together, we will win.
Yeah, I think you touch on a lot there. Is I think building the brand identity is a good thing that you were talking about with, esports teams thinking about themselves differently from a traditional sports team, or the cliche of traditional sports team, as in we're here to win, we have a jersey, we have mainstream sponsors, that's it. About things that you can do, like you said with EG, is building yourself a different kind of identity. Think about Team OG as well. They've built their own kind of identity around being more nerdy and more welcoming and really friendly place to hang out. And that's why people follow them, and being really open and honest and shy at the same time. You think about brands, I go back to FaZe once again. You think about pop culture, you think about rap, you think about Gucci and Louis Vuitton. 100 Thieves, you think FaZe, but plus a bit more esports prowess, maybe, and merchandise and this kind of stuff. And I think it's up to a lot of these teams to find that identity, because one thing that you just see all the time in the market is the new esports team launches, and I talked about this before, a new esports team launches, and then the next week they put their jersey on sale. And it's like, why does someone want to buy your logo on a T-shirt? Like, your logo means nothing. Like, what does the Nike tick mean without billions or trillions of dollars of advertising? It means nothing. Like, what does the Adidas Tango mean without billions or trillions of dollars of advertising? It means nothing. Red Bull, Monster, all these companies that you can sell a shirt with a simple white T-shirt with a logo and sell it for $80 plus, it means something because they've spent billions or trillions of dollars to get there. But why would someone care about your brand if they just, slap a logo on a shirt and off you go?
That's the right word, caring. So why anyone should care? One thing. Do you remember the story of Fortnite when they told that their competitor, the main competitor, is Netflix? So generally speaking, esports, like, I don't know. Okay, when we're talking about the esports bubble, I think the bubble is something that surrounds our head and limit our vision. So, for example, when we're talking about advertising, the esports advertising, I know there are lots of people that are praising that they're bigger budgets, more campaigns, more understanding. But compare it with the TV, it's nothing. And so our biggest competitor here is not, I don't know, the other esports org, for example, but the budgets that advertisers or sponsors are spending in the other media, dedicated to the other companies. And like, think of, for example, let's say, Death Stranding and the Monster integration. This is the simple example. You pick the esports org with the Monsters as the sponsor, and the Death Stranding. With the one single activation in Hideo Kojima game, they got great reach, like super reach within community. Mixed reviews, but at the same time, great reach, raise awareness a lot globally, and that's the point. And within the esports orgs, you have this shiny logo somewhere on the jersey. I call it a graveyard of the logos. And more or less, that's it. Like, there are some creative takes, there are some promo activations, but there's no impact. Why? Because people don't care about the campaigns, about the advertisers and the esports organization. But when you think of the organizations, like I think the Team Liquid is doing with the Honda. So what they're doing, they're trying to show. Do you remember I think when the hip hop artists were advertising Porsche cars, sporty cars. The exhibit was doing the show. I completely forgot the name of the show.
Hit My Ride.
Yeah. So the same. I really love the concept that the same could be applied within esports, when the esports talents and the esports influencers could be the ones that will promote the cool cars, because they are really relevant within their lifestyle. And what we've seen with the Ninja, for example, we're in the middle of the new cultural framework, when we will know what's the life of the streamer. What are the brand assets of the streamer? What are the channels that streamer is facilitating his or her lifestyle? That's why within the esports org, we should also question ourselves. Okay, if people should care, why? So what's the legacy? What's the idea? What's the role model, first of all, for you? Think of the simple in Natosphere. For lots of the kids, simple embodies a dream of raising in a semi-poor country, and becoming a world's pro. Like, it's a dream of the millions kids to become a Superman in their hobby. Because for lots of the kids, esports is a hobby these days. So caring is the right word.
Yeah, and like you're saying, it's content driven, right? And I think that's a major advantage for Team OG with Red Bull. You know, Red Bull's taken their stories and has followed them back to their hometowns. They talked to Thompson's brother and parents, and they showed his childhood home, and they talked about how, you know, they supported him in playing games and how his brother used to be better than him at Dota. And, you know, they followed that journey. Similar, you know, these quiet, small European towns, and now they're this global powerhouse, first ever team to win 2 TIs. So, no, I get what you mean for sure. My main question is, so with a bit of lead in, I've talked about this content too. So there's a whole lot of physiotherapists, exercise people, dietitians, personal trainers, mental health coaches that reach out to me. I'm sure they reach out to you all the time on LinkedIn and say, hey, I'd like to get into the market. I think there's merit. And I say, yeah, I agree. I think there's merit. But your issue is that you're a non-essential service right now, because an essential service to many of these esports teams are simply surviving. It's having enough money to pay for your players' salaries. It's raising more capital. It's paying for your gaming house. It's trying to get a tier 2 team that you can fly to DreamHack Open to maybe qualify to get to the main event that can help you get more sponsors. And that's the bucket, I think, that a lot of these teams or companies within esports put this kind of storytelling into. They put it into a non-essential service because it's not tax, it's not employee wages, it's not facility. But to me, it almost seems like it has to be an essential service. It's kind of like saying, I want to launch an energy drink brand and I don't want to spend anything on marketing. I would say, well, just don't bother. Don't launch it. Just leave it.
Yeah. Okay. So, for example, like a week ago, one entrepreneur reached us and asked us that, hey, could you help us to build a new esports team? And I was like, okay, what's the challenge? And he said they're newcomers. He already sold some players to teams like Complexity, etc. And his challenge was that these kids, they came from nowhere. They're no one, and some of them don't know how to use social media to become a dream of the fanboys or fangirls. So there's a challenge on, let's say, educating these kids that on one hand, it's super crucial to make practical results, win, to build a strong winning mindset. But at the same time, your biggest asset for the team is your media value. The more followers are following you, the more pop star are you. That's it. So suddenly you need to be a performer in game and outside the game. And this is the great challenge that can't be solved easily. Why? Because we live in the world of stress. That's why psychologists are so trendy as DJs used to be. Right now, everyone is going to the psychologist. In States, teenagers visiting psychologists, etc. So esports works acting as a mom or a father or a family. Should think about the mentality of the players and what it means to be a player. Because the Messi, like a superstar, he is shooting advertising like this, like every week or something like that, and there's no problem. Why? Because he has an agent, he has strict rules, he has the contracts, so there's an infrastructure of let's say supporting the player change. And one more here. I'm a believer of the talent agencies. When the talent agencies support the players, and I spoke with the Polish guys recently, they told me that what they're doing with the players, they help them establish their media brand, and at the same time help them to go through any stress that they are witnessing within the industry. Contracts, problems with your organization, with your team members, etc. Because lots of the kids, for example, I've seen a news break that there were homophobic problems with one particular team, and how kid could speak with that or resolve this topic. He needs some other entity, I don't know, the family, the mother, or someone else who will help him to solve the issue. In terms of the surviving, But let's ask ourselves, like, where the money in esports? And I know that majority of the organizations will preach on sponsors. Somehow they are raising money within the different, let's say, investors that still think that this is the hype industry and they will sell the shares in the future and they will be profitable, etc. But in terms of sponsors, majority of doors are closed. Like you can't convince sponsors that it's something special. So unless you invest in the workforce from that world. And I've seen quite the opposite trend when there are lots of the former players became C-level executives of esports organizations. And I really doubt that they're good in selling a new campaign to the marketing director, let's say, of Visa. So there has to be a balance. And what I really believe that the teams should create a diversified business model. Like, for example, you're mentioning FaZe. I don't think they're esports org. They're streaming powerhouse. And esports is more like, hey, we have a shiny, cool they're an entertainment enabler for lots of the brands, connecting the dots within the hip hop, esports, streamers, etc.
I would agree. It's almost like I guess it goes back to what you were saying before, right? Is what's the team identity? And Team Liquid and Cloud9, in my mind, while both great big organizations, they're both pure esports and winning. And that's all I think of them about. Maybe TSM as well and a few other teams, right? But when you think about FaZe, you think pop culture and you think about a little bit of esports. It's like you said, their CSGO team is good, but it's almost like token esports. And same with their Rainbow Six Siege team. If they still have it, I'm not sure. And then you think about 100 Thieves and you look at the way that they communicate. They say all the time they're content first. They really are content and streetwear first, esports second. So that's their identity. FaZe is cool. It's content, like you said, it's gaming. You think about 100 Thieves, it's streetwear, it's developing their products, it's gaming. And then you think about, Team Liquid, 100 Thieves, it's more like esports and winning. So then what brings those different guys apart, like between the Team Liquid and the Cloud9s and these kind of guys too, right? Like what builds their identity versus others. And like you were saying too about working with players to bring up their identity, like that's great. I think it's fantastic because you don't often see those players turn ambassadors, right? I saw a hilarious YouTube video that had a compilation of all of Shaquille O'Neal's advertisements after he retired. It's crazy. He does everything from like, I don't know these direct examples, but it's everything from like car insurance to cereal. They just like slap Shaquille's face on it because everyone loves him. So it doesn't matter what he talks about, it's interesting. And you're right, you don't see that so much. But I think that's why for me I'm so, I guess, bearish on hardcore esports and bullish on influencers and content, because the value that I can see that it provides right now, the lower overheads to produce something with the content creator for the higher return. If you take a direct example, someone like Laserbeam, lives in Sydney, Australia, Fortnite content creator, gets 100, and I was explaining this to a director at KPMG today, and his jaw hit the floor. I said, look, there's this guy, Laserbeam, lives in Sydney, makes content previously out of his bedroom, now out of an office that's supplied to him by his management. He gets 175 million video views a month just on YouTube. Don't include Twitch, don't include Twitter. If you want to work with a guy of his size, if you want him to do a dedicated video for you, which is 3 to 5 million views on your products, it's anywhere from $80,000 to $300,000, depending on how much he likes your product and what he feels like and how busy he is at the time. And I do have his deck, but I don't think I can release that. But it's definitely within that range for 100%. I have their pricing deck. So for 100, let's say $100,000, 150, it's around the middle. He can get for you 5 million views on one video, plus his 1 million followers on Instagram. He could post about it, make a story, et cetera, et cetera. What do you get for $100,000, $200,000 with an esports team? Like you were saying, it's the graveyard logo sponsorship. And that's because the esports team doesn't see the content as an essential service They're too busy paying out their salaries, and they can't afford the way that their business is set up. I don't think they can afford to do those things to give that return. So I feel like then it's almost a cycle. And I talked to FaZe about this, and I don't want to be too critical of them because some of them are doing great work, but using the exact words of Jeff Pabst, the chief revenue officer of FaZe, you know, he has some concern that tier 1 teams or organizations or events won't be able to re-sign because of these exact reasons. You know, they're selling on the hype of esports, they're selling on the interest, but it's not just about logo slapping. You need to do a campaign, become involved. So if you think about FaZe, it's how do we solve the issue? How do we make the content cost less to create, build in more margin for us, and also build in more worth into the campaign? And using it as another example, I think the Burger King Rebel Whopper launch they did was great. You know, they helped Burger King launch a Rebel Whopper, and that was purely through content. It was through them creating videos and sharing them on social media. It didn't require them to fly a Counter-Strike team around the world to 20 events. It didn't require them to spend $700,000 USD on a stage and lighting setup and 30 staff to run a tournament. It didn't require any of that. And we're going through the exact same with a client today. We have a client that came to us, initially wanted us to run like a large series of events for them. And I came back to them with a $1.5 million quote. And they went, wait a minute, $1.5 million for only 2,000 to 8,000 tickets sold? And I said, yes, because that's what you've asked for. Because out of that $1.5 million quote, $700,000 of that goes directly into the stage and the infrastructure. It costs a lot. And the 100 PCs that it requires to play Fortnite that we need to hire for $30,000, $40,000. So it's that rethinking about the whole concept. And I think it's about thinking about yourself as a startup and not as a corporation. Yes, you know, Intel funds the Intel Extreme Masters. It's awesome to have these big tournaments, but do you need to do exactly that? And in this case, the brand that initially came to us wanting that is getting us to rejig, because they're like, look, we don't want to take the $1 million windfall after you sold the tickets, after you sold sponsorship, that kind of stuff. That's not what we're out for. So how can we get more people live, more viewership, but scale things down a little bit? We don't have to do the big dick swinging and have the biggest AAA tournament with all the FaZe players, 100 Thieves flying over and Benji Fishy, etc. How can we make this more about us? And how can we do something that's a 500 ticket event, but it's in an existing venue? You know, ESL have a 300-seat studio in Australia. There's another 300-seat arena that's launching in Australia. That's not going to cost $700,000 to turn on because it's already got the cameras, it's already got the lights, it's already got the broadcasting equipment. So can we scale it down, and instead of doing a 4,000 ticket event, can we do a 700, but provide some intrinsic value and, you know, an eighth of the cost or a quarter of the cost?
I think we should start, when we're comparing esports org and influencers and streamers, we should start with the business needs. I will mention a Pringles campaign that is going live right now in Moscow. They launched a new chair, gaming chair. You've seen this video when basically you have a robo arm that feeds you as the gamer. And the major part of the campaign is the promo site, when you could do a challenge within the hashtag, then you will win the prizes. Like a simple standard mechanics, but at the same time, they have this cool video. And with the help of PR agency, they've tackled the biggest media, the biggest channel, with some sort of, it's not a groundbreaking, but it's more like a cool activation. So what I'm talking about here is one piece of content, like 30 seconds, not the best one, not the best production, etc., but the right partners within the brand that surrounds them. A digital agency, a gaming chair producer, and PR. I think there is PR agency because they are doing really well within the media, and the media here and within the esports and influencers are the major, let's say, a reach provider, the audience provider that could really help to perform a breakthrough within the market, to push the esports beyond the niche industry, to open the doors to the new audience. And there's just two answers: creativity and the right partners. Right now, what I'm seeing with esports organizations, if I will be a brand manager, I would ask myself, do I really need an esports org when I could sponsor one influencer and he will get a great reach? bigger reach than the esports org. So then I'm asking myself, what kind of role within the industry I want to achieve? So I think offline events suit brands that want to build the legacy within the industry. They want to be a cultural relevant to a certain audience. If you're a brand like old school brand that people don't care about, the kids don't care about, you need to communicate within their channels, within the messaging that is really appealing to them. And here streamers could really facilitate the conversation. And in terms of the content, lots of the people are thinking that people remember the content. I will argue, because each day they're consuming so big content, so many content pieces, so many different channels, so many different medias. They're going outside their flat. They see so many activations from the different brands. So you need to stand out from the crowd. And there are lots of the strategies. I think that using a streamer, what I like about for example, one simple example from the Samsung, when they presented the team Samsung recently, and within this team there was a DJ Steve Aoki, there was a ninja streamer, and at the same time there was a virtual influencer, like a virtual model. So they're trying to promote their smartphones to the audience within their heroes, by using their heroes and telling that they're a part of the Samsung big family. Right now, Adidas is using Ninja in Barcelona Metro as a part of their broader Adidas family. So I think that the challenge with the streamers is to show their potential, in terms of the content, because not every content has been created equal. Majority of the content is more I'm hearing what the guy is saying on the stream, but I'm cooking or I'm doing some other stuff, and I will, I don't know, pay really great attention to his stream when something special will happen, like a certain event. So I think the agencies like yours should really highlight, let's say, an important role of the ideas. Like to place a logo, even with the stream, sometimes it's pretty dumb stuff, especially when all these kids are super creative. You just need to provide them, infuse them, again, with the care of your brand, because the more they will care of you and your results, the better will be a synergy between a streamer as a platform or esports org and the brand or advertiser.
Yeah, there's a lot of good information in there, you're saying, for sure. And I think part of why I wanted you to bring on to talk is that, my passion is esports and my love has been esports for so long, but I've found it so hard in the past 12 months to talk to a brand and say to them, yes, I think you should spend some money in esports and not in influencers. And it's honestly killing me. And I'm begging on LinkedIn all the time, please send me good case studies. Please, anyone, send me some good info about some esports sponsorships, because I want to support the industry as much as I can. But right now, for me as a business, it makes perfect sense for me to go to influencers. And part of that is due to the way that I'm seeing a lot of marketing personally for me develop. We're working with a brand at the moment, which we just signed on, which has given us a budget, they've given us a product, and they've given us a CPA, and they've said, go nuts. And we need to help them adhere to that CPA. And it's no longer just that billboard advertising. And it's different. It's different for the influencers, because many influencers, you email them and they say, yes, that's $7,000 for a pre-roll, and that's it. I'm not going to guarantee you views. I'm not going to guarantee you clicks, nothing like that. This is my cost. So we're having to build that relationship to break down those walls, to say, look, guys, let's make 4x the amount of that money in commissions, and build that relationship. But still, I can break down those walls. But even with esports, there's a tier 1 team who we've talked to in the past, and I got through their sign an NDA. I got through their deck. They said, hey, can you help us reach out to some sponsors? I said, sure, it sounds interesting. You guys are awesome. I've been following you for a while. But their deck was just not good. It was, here's how many Twitter followers we have. Here are the tournaments we won. Here's how many views the tournaments have. And if you sponsor us, we'll do 3 pieces of content for you and a few tweets. And that's it. There's no like, I'm like, okay, what's in the content? Who's shooting the content? What's it going to be about? What are the tweets going to be involved? Are you going to come, if I do a booth at PAX, are you going to come to that and bring people to my booth? And what can you provide to me? And talking to Jeff Pabst about this, it was the same thing. Part of why I like talking to him, because he answered a lot of my questions, was, you know, if you go to sponsor an NFL team, they can say to you, yes, Toyota, I can per these stats say I will provide you an 8% uplift in America-wide sales if you sponsor me. So now I can do that with influencers. I've got all of these Excel documents now with all of the data from this client we're working with. I feel like I'm qualified for a maths degree. Now I have that. But I can go to an influencer and say, okay, I know that likely if they get me 1.5 million views, I'll get this many clicks, which means I'll get this many signups and I'll get this many buys. So judging by those numbers, you know, I can be fairly confident in reaching out to an influencer. But I feel like I can't right now with an esports team. I feel like an esports team is reaching out to me just based on how many Twitter followers they have, or how many engagements they have, or how many viewers the League of Legends Championship Series has because they competed in it, or the Dota 2 International, or IEM Katowice, or something like that. I really need to see more value. I'm having a really hard time.
So I have there are several key things here. One thing is that esports organization should switch from me culture to you culture, to place a sponsor as a certain in a central role within the pitch decks. So generally speaking, I've seen all these decks. Like no, I wouldn't buy it unless I'm a big fan of your organization. That's the point. And when you check the business cases, the biggest numbers are within the betting companies, like okay, KFC in China, but they have completely different culture, consuming culture. They have advanced mobile applications where you could track promo codes, etc. We have this in Europe as well. The McDonald's became the sponsors of the We Play latest tournament, one of the latest tournament, and I think they could track a delivery, a number of orders within the delivery, comparing with the peak tournament. But as an esports organization, you should bring ideas to the table straight away. First of all, think of the KPIs of any sponsors, yearly KPIs. What are their goals? What are their strategic goals and tactical goals? Then map these goals within your, I don't know, the reach, your creative team, strategic team, etc., and present a real ideas on how partnership could enhance the result, the current advertisers campaign within the other industries, how what could be an impact on the brand metrics, and how we should measure it properly. And there's another challenge within the scorecard of the marketing manager. There's a challenge of the Bayersdorf company right now. They're demanding from the streamers or streaming platforms to show them CPV, cost per view, so they could compare it with the YouTube advertising. Just simple as that. Like no magic, nothing so special. And guess what? No one is willing to provide them CPV at the moment, because for lots of the streamers or the streaming platforms, it's better to sell concurrent viewers, a general amount of viewers that being on the channel, etc. But that doesn't mean anything, because the brand is exposed, could be exposed for several seconds when within the certain place on the screen, a small place on the screen with a low visibility, with a blind zone of the consumer, etc., etc. So here, and another thing, in Spain, local experts are complaining that the major league on League of Legends has the best autoplay on Twitch. So basically, generally speaking, lots of their numbers is like when a certain person, consumer, enters the Twitch main page, and then you have a view. But that's not a view.
Right. Okay.
That's just autoplay. So the numbers are wrong.
Yeah.
There's no transparency within the measurement, and there's no dedication to the client's needs. How to solve it? As simple as that. Customer development. Sit with the brand manager, try to understand deeper their goals, and think over how you could help to empower him. Maybe with a small budget, start with a small campaign, prove that you're really efficient and worth spending budget, and not try to reach, the stars, because lots of the organizations are trying to, hey, there's a hype, pay us lots of the money right now because we are cool.
Yeah, I think lots of process, but I think you focus on a lot of really important things here. And part of why I wanted to talk to you and many others is I want to propose, everyone can criticize, right? Sure. Everyone can say players don't earn enough money, brands aren't spending enough, leagues aren't earning enough. There's no tier 2 scene. It basically doesn't exist in almost every game, right? Except for League of Legends in Europe. That seems to be the only place that tier 2 scene exists in any game at all. So, try to figure out some of these things. And that's why I like those last suggestions from you, which is how can we actually address these? And I don't want my life on LinkedIn to be talking about just do what FaZe does, because it's such a cop-out. It's easy to say because FaZe has 2 10, 20 bedroom mansions next to each other, and, they're all rocking diamond chains and Rolexes and driving Lambos. And they've got big sponsorship. It's not easy to just instantly become FaZe, right? But I think that some pathways to that are like what we've been talking about. Are proving the CPV, are proving the CPA, and how can you justify yourself against others? An example that I wanted to give that I forgot about, I just remembered. So we had these 2 companies approach us, very large in the traditional business space in Australia, and offer us a strategic investment to also change our direction a little bit. And we entertained that for a while because these were awesome partners that could have brought us way into the future. And while the stuff they wanted us to work on wasn't our core business, it was still within the realm, so it was interesting to us. But going through the process of talking to them about investment, talking to them about how much investment is worth in the esports industry, talking about what the multiples of revenue generally are, and ours are much more reasonable than what you see on Forbes, not 22x, etc. They said to us that, look, even if your multiple is 10x, 8x, 7, like you see on Forbes, that's the lowest teams, according to them, which is still blown out in some capacities. They say we're not choosing between you and another esports organization. We're choosing between you and a mining company. We're choosing between you and buying stocks in Tesla. We're choosing between you and buying another $3 million in Facebook ads for another asset that we own. And I think that's part of what we need to start thinking about more. And that's what I'm doing with these influencers with this client. All of the data I have right now is based on Facebook. It's based on the click-through rate, and then it's based on the internal conversions off that. So, I said this in some LinkedIn content, I have a brand here in Australia who I'm friendly with, and they said, look, we spend 1 to 1.2 million Australian dollars per month on Google ads. We know exactly how much we spend and how much we get back. So they're really hesitant to even give me $5,000 for an influencer campaign unless I can straight up prove to them or promise to them that they're going to spend that 5 and they're going to get 7 back. And within influencers now it's hard, and with esports it's even harder.
I have a trick here. Imagine the brand team, and when we're talking about the marketing in corporations, it's the politics. Their whole job is dedicated to certain internal politics. How to become marketing director, how to become, the top boss within the company, etc. So they have two separate things to accomplish. One thing is are the numbers, financial numbers within a year related to the marketing numbers. But at the same time, they have the ego metric, ego scoring. So when you help them to build a case study that they could show within an internal team, to internal team, marketing director, colleagues, etc., and the others will appreciate their work support their idea, said like, wow, you were so innovative, you will have a win-win situation. Because what we're dealing here with is building a relationship with the clients. So I think a small creative campaign, when you're having all these influencers and help brand, let's imagine a L'Oreal, okay, I've seen it like so many things. Like this campaign could be a certain song that will be created within a bunch of influencers and will be dedicated to a communication territory of a particular L'Oreal brand. And this campaign will hit the reach, it will hit the media, etc. But in the end of the day, as an agency, what you really need to do, package a case study for the client so he could go and show their colleagues, so the colleagues will spend and allocate budget to you in the future. Or publish this case study within the biggest advertising local media as the benchmark and benchmark how things should be done within the influencers here and now. So and then the bigger budgets will come when the other clients will be sure that they've seen enough proofs that it was investing in. And don't forget about the constant innovation. Lots of the corporate big clients are desperately seeking for something fresh air within their communications. I've seen lots of the agencies that were young and fresh, especially within the social media. And for me, influencers are an extension of the social media evolution. So in this sense, the young agencies, when they came and showed that we should think differently, we should be more creatively, and we will get greater cases, then you will have a win-win within any stakeholder at the market. So I will give you one more example from the local Spanish market. The Philips made an activation with League of Legends and streamers and offline events. They were promoting like a new product for the, I don't know, not kids, but let's say teenagers. And they've got some really good results in sales. They shown this case within the conference and within advertising EFI festival. But then they said, we don't want to publish this case publicly. And I'm asking myself, why? What's the reason? And I think the reason is simple. People don't trust esports as an industry that will help a marketing manager, a marketing officer feel herself or himself really as a marketing giant, as a marketing guru, as a marketing genius, etc. So I think that what could you also done with your work, and we should do with our work, embrace the case culture. Why I've done the esports ads is when I've seen that for me to search a meaningful advertising activation in esports, it takes weeks. Like, and this is like time consuming. If I would be a brand manager and I would want to find out what G Fuel is doing in esports advertising, that would be painful for me a bit. I know I know where to find it, but for a newcomer, for a new person that want to launch a similar brand, a competitor, it's challenging stuff, especially when esports organizations, when they're doing a content campaigns, they name these campaigns completely differently, and they don't mention a brand. So and they don't build the business cases within their YouTube, Vimeo accounts whenever they could be. That's why I'm a big fan of esports organizations websites when there will be a B2B section. Like right now, if you're a brand manager, if you go to any of esports orgs websites, they wouldn't have any content for you. There wouldn't be any section for you, because you're not a part of the game. It's entertainment industry. We have the fans and the followers. So the solution here is to care about the advertiser and create a safe space for them, to showing that hey, we have a fan-centric business and you could participate and contribute to our big mission. So the fan is in the center. The players are around this circle. Esports org is there, and you could help us to build an infrastructure, build a meaningful connections, etc. So in this sense, the esports orgs or agencies could be guides for the brands and help that will help them navigate the communication with the fans, especially in terms of culture of toxic and hate speech.
Yeah, and what you were saying is what brought me to influencers in the first place, is talking to these traditional non-endemic brands, trying to sell them esports and realizing that an influencer campaign is often good to get them a taste of the market, to give them a bit of a provable test, to let them spend $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 instead of going straight for that $1 million tournament sponsorship, that straight up Team Liquid 12-month sponsorship. So no, I think that's good too. Look, we both need to head off, but I think this is another discussion that we should book for a few weeks from now, because we covered probably not even half of the topics. We didn't even talk about the European governing body, of which there's 400 that already exist. But I'm sure we can talk about that as that matures, because I'm still trying to digest the one that had VR yoga in it. And Tencent is one of the owners or founding partners of it. I don't know. Who knows? But anyway, there's so much going on. But for those people who are following you, obviously you said, I think I could summarize for anyone who's watching on Twitch, on LinkedIn, or listening to this as a VOD on YouTube, or later on when it becomes an audio-only podcast. Summarize what you're doing from an outsider's perspective, I think is important in the market. And for those people who want to learn from what the best are doing, have a look at the esports ads that Nikolay's putting together, because it's a great way to gain information, to gain data, and to see positive examples of what other people are doing. And that's super important. Talking to a director at KPMG today, that's what he wanted from me. He wants ammo to be able to arm himself so he can go to a big mining company, he can go to a big bank and say, look, here is a positive example of what a big business has done in Australia or globally for the market. You can do that too. And here are the positive results. If you'd like to start, that discussion, I've got Chris you can talk to, or in another country, you've got someone else. But building those champions of the industry, I think, is so important. Things like those Mercedes ads, beautiful. Things like, what the We Play Dota 2 tournament has been doing with the different ways of content, the things that Beyond the Summit have done. New innovative ways of thinking about how to make it grassroots, the fighting games community, how they're so gritty and stuff. Are there examples that we can collate together, through Nikolay's initiative, and to use that as champions of the industry and for all of us to help grow it together? So I think it's a noble cause. But for those people who want to follow you online on any platform or your company, where can they do so?
I think the LinkedIn is the best starting point. Just search for Nikolay Syusko. And I want to add one small thing, because I feel that it's a bit uncomfortable for me. We were criticizing a lot, but I'm thinking that within this sense, think of criticizing as trying to boost an industry forward, trying to push the barriers, trying to crash the walls. So the positive change will happen. And my dream is when on the esports ads, I could highlight at least 100 business cases with the proven impact from the esports industry. When I could publish a MasterCard case within the world's finals within the LoL and say that, they increased their business metric, their brand metrics, and the business metrics on the Warriors territories. When I could publish the next campaign, let's imagine of G Fuel, how the influencers from FaZe impact their brand within the sales metrics and the product sales, etc. This is my dream, and I'm I'm moving to it. So I'm pushing the market players to build cases. Show me the money. Show me the money. And
exactly.
And we will spread the message also with your help.
Yeah, and I think like you were saying, I've been talking about this probably in my last 6 months in content, is that I'm trying to be very open and honest at all times, and to tell people when I'm being critical, and to tell people when I don't have a fully formed opinion. And I really am begging for more information about esports case studies, because it's my passion. You know, I have a Battlefield 2 tattoo on my leg, and my best mate, and I was the best man at his wedding, he has the same tattoo on his arm. You know, it goes deep into my blood. And, you know, people like you and I have spent many years working in this industry for underpayment or no payment. And we want to see us succeed, and we wouldn't be here if we didn't think that. But really, you know, help us help you to empower the industry. We want to help this go forwards, and we are sincerely requesting help. And this criticism comes from a pure place of wanting to help.
Okay, one small news that I'm working on, and you will like it.
Sure.
I think this week, and I'm a bit lazy on this stuff, but I think this week we will publish the first database of esports agencies global. So in the future, we will link the cases directly to the agencies. So the sponsors, esports organizations, whatever, could check the profile of the agencies, could check the case studies. And within this approach, we will motivate the agencies to build cases in a meaningful way and compare their own cases with the competitors, and to see why their cases suck and why competitors are doing so well within the cases storytelling. So to having this one database of the agencies, to having an exposure of what companies are doing, and simplify services, because right now, if you check the different agencies, one is doing consultancy something, the other is doing influencer something, so great reach of the services. And we need to create a system of how, for example, influencer agency differs from the full service advertising agency. So the client would know whom to choose within so many different options.
Yeah, exactly. We're on the same page. All right. Thank you so much. We need to get out of here. So thank you for coming on.
My pleasure.
And thank you to everyone who's listening in, either live now on Twitch, on LinkedIn Live, through the VOD later, or from the audio on the podcast. We've got a bunch more guests coming out over the next couple of weeks. We've been absolutely inundated with inbounds, thanks to some of the recent growth on LinkedIn. So thank you to those people who are suggesting guests, introducing, or reaching out yourselves. It's been a massive flood. So thanks, everyone. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
See you. Bye.